Welcome back to the Glow Up Girl podcast. I am Kyra Mitchell-Lewis, and I am so happy to be joined today by Lara Currie.
See, I put it in your head. I put it in your head. Now it's a thing.
Guys, and I have to admit, I came in and called her Laura, and she said, no, Lara. A good thing I can laugh at myself because I'm Kyra and people call me Kira all the time. So, But I'm very happy to have you here. She is an author, a coach, and also known as a dysfunctional communications whisperer. So welcome to the Glow Up Girl podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I would not have such a thing about my name if it didn't used to be Lara Smith, and there's nothing more boring than Laura Smith. So,
You know what? I agree with you though, because guess what? Our names are 2 syllables and it's not that hard. Like I tell people when they say, I used to let that slide when I was younger and they'd be like, oh, Kira. And I was like, ugh, I cringe. But then I'd be like, no, it's Kyra. It's actually 2 syllables. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
So why don't we get started why don't you tell the Glow Up Girl audience a little bit more about you?
Sure. So I have, over my career, I used to be an investigative journalist way back in the day. And as journalism was being completely desecrated by capitalist institutions, you can kind of tell my bend on that one. But being in it, my boss sat me down one day and said, let's break down your pay. If we go ahead and put you on contract, this is what it's going to look like. Because it looked great on contract, but it ended up being about $3 an hour, which was untenable. And so he was very gently trying to tell me, hey, that degree you just got? It's useless now. So I went into the nonprofit world and worked for agencies such as the American Sign Language Interpreting School of Seattle and Abused Deaf Women's Advocacy. And nonprofits in general, they had a very similar theme to investigative journalism. And then I went on to open a private investigative agency with a lawyer friend of mine. And they may not seem like it flows, but it's all diving deeper. It's all diving deeper to tell a story and to discover a story. Well, as my career went on and I moved from Seattle, I ended up becoming a child advocate in high conflict divorces. And it was at this point that I started to realize there are some serious themes. There are themes to all uncomfortable conversations, all dysfunctional discourse, and the way that people react when they feel attacked. And so I started to dive deeper into that, which led to my podcast, Difficult Happens, and my book, Difficult Happens. And I help people who are in these stressful fields, like realtors and family law attorneys, nurses, social workers, help them deal with difficult people. And also set up their clients for success, because it's really a couple of key things. You can set up all hard conversations to succeed.
No, I definitely, when you and I talked, it was just so very eye-opening to talk to someone who, deals in that. And I think, we were talking about being in a corporate space, and especially when it's women in a corporate space and how we deal with just that thing, difficult conversations or things that just aren't comfortable for us, and really sort of guided us to our topic and, around manipulative bullying in the workplace. And so let's go ahead and dig into that, because definitely think that's common, and a lot of people are going to be able to, probably have had some experience. So for people that may not be aware of what it looks like, can you start by talking about what it looks like to someone that may be experiencing it?
Yeah, manipulation comes in so many forms, especially for women. Women and anyone in the one down position, anyone who's been marginalized or dismissed by structures and systems. So basically everybody but white men really has been dismissed or marginalized by systems, and everything from the school districts to the banking system to corporate, whatever. It's all structured to speak in a certain language and to conform to a certain norm. And both of these ideas are constructs. What do I mean by that? the whole theory of normal was actually created during the Industrial Revolution. Because it used to be that, if you were going to catch a train, you'd catch a train in the afternoon. Well, if you were going to leave from New York and then show up in Chicago, you had to have some normalizing or some succinct times, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the standard time system was created. When you would create a widget and somebody else wanted to create a tire that widget worked with, well, you had to have a normal, which then created here's the normal, here's abnormal, and here's optimal normal. Whereas before, we all just kind of went for the ideal. It's like, well, it would be great if I would eat less and exercise.
Right.
But now you're holding this one ideal. Well, it would be great if I could be 5'9", but I'm Irish. It's never going to happen.
Right. I would definitely be stretched out if I were 5'9" and not 5'4.5". So.
That's a fact. So basically, what happens if you don't conform to the norm, and especially if you don't agree with me, I'm going to get, what do they call it? It's not just passive aggressive, but it's just, there's this kind of hostility. It's subtle hostility, basically, to get you to get back in line. Now, what do I mean by get back in line? They're not consciously thinking this, but it's different. Your subconscious goes along throughout the day going normal, 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 weird. And it's that weird that kind of gets your mind going. And we don't like weird. We don't like change. We don't like uncomfortable. We are animals at our base. So it may not be overt, but there is a lot of passive aggressive behavior out there.
Yes, a lot. Yeah. So, and so as we look to, let's maybe, talk about what it looks like inside of a workplace, because again, like you said, people may be experiencing, they may be going through this, but they can't quite identify, or they just don't know exactly what it looks like. Or maybe it's just happened so much that it's become normal to them.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of different ways that their manipulation kind of shows up. So it can show up as sort of minimizing. It can show up as passive aggressive. It can show up as overt aggression. It can show up as dismissal, labeling, and dismissing. So it can show up in a lot of ways. It's sort of like they talk about porn. You know what it is. You know it when you see it. You can't define it. You know when you are being marginalized, minimized, dismissed. And sometimes other people can see it, but we all speak a certain language.
Right.
We all speak a certain conflict language. Now, when it comes to like conflict personality types, we all have them. And there are 4 main ones. And women in particular fall under the either perfectionist or the pleaser. Now, when I say conflict personality type, what I mean is you may not go out around your normal day. Like in my normal day, I'm a perfectionist. I can't help it. You wouldn't know it by my desk right now, but really, the piles make sense to me.
Right.
But when I get into conflict, I slide into the pleaser conflict personality type, because when I'm pushed to the edge, when my back is against the wall, that's what happens. Other people, they'll go right to perfectionism, and maybe they'll rely on facts. Well, you're incorrect because of this, and I'll bring all my facts to the table, when that's not going to win the argument. The pleaser tries to solve the problem. That's not going to win the argument. The avoider ghosts or plays innocent. They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I never got that email. Wasn't sure what you say. And I'm just
yes.
And then
they're like Homer Simpson in that meme where he's like disappearing into the bushes.
Exactly. Oh man, I gotta use that one. That's a good one. And then the last one is the victim. And it's easy to malign and to get really angry at the victim because no one likes a victim. No one likes a martyr. They're easy to attack. Society agrees. Blamers and victims, but they're the ones that are in the most pain usually. And so those are the ones that elicit the most reaction from all of the other ones. So basically, those are the 4 main ways that people react. If you can realize that every conflict personality type has a kryptonite, has one that sets you off in a particular way, then you can realize, oh, wait, before I go down this rabbit hole of triangulation or whatever your soup du jour is, mine would be to run in there and solve it, get it all fixed, make sure everybody's happy. Before that gets triggered, you got to take a step back and say, all right, what is my side of the net? What belongs to me? What can be accomplished at this very moment? If we are all in a heightened emotional state, you're not hearing me, I'm not hearing you, nothing is going to get solved. It will only escalate. So
Yes.
you got to take a look at the situation that you're in.
Right.
On top, yeah. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh no. Well, I was just also going to say that I think that's so interesting what you said, because I can only use myself as an example here, but I think about like being in the corporate workplace and things happening, and things that I would normally in the past would stop and try to fix and go into the pleaser mode of like, I'm just going to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've been really working on, as someone told me, just because I was invited to a party, it doesn't mean I have to show up.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I've started to look at, those invites and really like go, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to entertain that, or I'm not going to, your invitation is declined. I'm busy.
Mm-hmm.
Because we do as women have a tendency, if you see something, especially if you see something breaking down, you're like, oh my God, I should just step in. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to fix them, but it just creates this cycle of dysfunction where you're constantly stepping in to fix something, when really and truly you have to put the onus back on some of the people that you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that just in some conversations or just that I've had with people in the workplace, like I see that recurring. And obviously these are conversations with women, but it's just quite interesting that we do fall immediately into those roles where men would never, like, they're not, no, they're not trying to fix it. They're like, y'all can figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
or you can do this, you so-and-so can do this, or you can do that, but they're not going to fall into a pleaser and try to, make things okay. It's just, or it's just like you said, it's the ghosting. It's
Mm-hmm.
the, yeah, I know there's a problem, but watch me slide away, people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just a lot of pressure, I think, on women in the workplace in dealing with this.
Yeah. Yeah, my son jokes a little bit, and it's a painful truth, but we were talking about his job, and I'm so grateful that all of my kids have jobs. They're all working during this pandemic. I'm like super excited
Yes.
about that. It is true. I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
But we were talking about his job, and if he's going to keep working from home, and he's like, yeah, you know what? I told them I'm going to work from home from now on, whether it's pandemic or not. And I was like, really? Are you? You can say that. And he goes, Mom, I got the white man flush. I'm going to play that card whenever I can.
Oh.
And he was sort of joking, but at the same time, it's like, that's the attitude right there.
Yeah.
I'm not dissing on my son. Luke, I'm not dissing.
We're not dissing on you.
I called him out. Now he knows that he's the son I was talking about. Whoops, go ahead and cut that part. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
but it's true. They have that mentality of entitlement. And I want to say here, there are words that we think of as negative and icky and blah, entitlement, victim, pleaser, perfectionist, whatever. They're words. They're words that we can kind of all agree on. We've all been all of them, every last one of them. We've all expressed each one. It's not about belittling and demeaning. It's about identifying so we can come up with strategies. Because although my son is joking and he does the best that he can in this world to use his power for good and to, walk in this world in a way that he respects and that we all can get behind, it's true. You don't know what you don't know until you know.
Yeah.
And right now, I think we're kind of cracking the door, and we are able to say, hey, I noticed that you haven't helped out with this project. We could really use your expertise. Can you come on in and take over this, and this part while we've got this, and this? We can now help manage. We can help identify where we're already at. Now, I want to also say there are out of all of the workplaces, probably these are the 20% unicorn workplaces. There are 80% out there that are still dysfunctional and are going to take a lot more door kicking, But when we all affirm and draw our boundaries clearly in a respectful way, then they can kick that on up the chain or get angry and upset, and you can, respond accordingly.
Yes. I like that, because obviously I talk a lot about boundaries and mental health and mental wellness on this podcast. And you're right, everything always really comes back to a boundary. And
Mm-hmm.
it comes back to how you are establishing those and how you're treating yourself. So it's how you're teaching other people to treat you. And it is this situation where I think most people find themselves in a place where they really need to be retraining people
Mm-hmm.
how to treat them, but they're afraid of the backlash that comes with establishing those boundaries.
Yeah. Or we've got our family of origin, where if we ever drew a boundary or if we ever talk back,
Mm-hmm.
the repercussions, we only know what we know. And so we bring all those heritage emotions with us, and
Mm-hmm.
we have to retrain ourselves too. When I
Right.
work one on one with clients, we do a blueprint of basically their communication style. And there is always a micro boundary breach situation. We all have them.
Mm-hmm.
It's those little things, it's that one more hour or one more email or
Mm-hmm.
one more
Yeah.
project or, one more not promotion. There's always a
Mm-hmm.
micro boundary breach that leads to that wall coming down. And
Mm-hmm.
as women, we will often blame ourselves and not realize that, oh, no, no, no. At any moment, we can say, I need a redo on that. I know I
Mm-hmm.
said XYZ. I'm unable to do that. I'm unable to perform
Right.
that task
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
We get to say what's okay and what's not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like that. And also, something you said earlier that I think is also is important as well. Is you said that people, only know what they know.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to, if it is someone at work who may be the manipulative bully, and maybe they're not, maybe they know, but but they, like you said, they know what they know, and you're trying to also meet that person where they are. And I think if people are open to conversation and discussion and talking about it, and and if you're the person that is being bullied, that having a conversation with someone and being able to have openly communicate is
Mm-hmm.
also key, is
Mm-hmm.
important as well, because those people, I mean, what I've learned is that you may not know where someone else has come from and what they've been through and what they are holding inside, and especially a lot of times with men. And
Mm-hmm.
I say that because my husband is a person who is, he finds it hard to communicate his words and how he's feeling. So a lot of times it's just ah! It's like what?
Mm-hmm.
Or
0 to
he's like,
10.
or it's just it's like the shutdown. His
Mm-hmm.
his is generally the okay, well, I don't know. Then I don't want to talk about it. It's more that, but it's also me getting of saying, okay, I realize this, that while I am very free with my words and, oftentimes too much, but,
Mm-hmm.
and he may not be that way, but it's finding that way to meet in the middle.
Oh, absolutely. Personal development is the muscle that does all the heavy
Mhm.
lifting on all of the learning, all the professional development, relational development, anything that you do. So when you grow personally, it trickles over. Just like when stuff's happening at work, it's going to impact your personal life. Or when
Mhm.
stuff is happening in your personal life, it's going to impact your work life. It's just, we're whole human beings in that way.
Right.
And
Yeah.
isn't it interesting that it's just so funny because my husband is a very quiet, introverted fella. They always pick these didactic, vivacious, outgoing individuals. It's like, what, are we the key to the club? What's going on now?
Right. And you're like, no, but really, it's so funny because like my husband, I was saying to him earlier, we were talking about friends or something, I don't know, like something. I said, oh, well, I mean, you're not like that outgoing. You wouldn't. Oh, I know. I was saying something about, of all things, remembering that cartoon, King of the Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
how Hank and his friends will always stand outside in the alley and drink beer and talk and stuff. And they told my husband, I was like, I don't know, you'd never be out in the on the sidewalk talking to the guys. Or where he was like, how do you know that? I was like, duh, I'm looking at you, sir, who is like, yeah, no, I'm not going out there. I mean, I see people, and I said, and that's cool. That's just that's your thing. That's who you are. And I said, and honestly, I told him, I said, honestly, I'm the same way to a certain extent. I think that, I come across as very extrovert, but I'm definitely somewhere like half and half. And there are a lot of times where I'm just like, no, I'd just rather be in here reading or watching TV.
I love all of the assessments. I actually did a whole series on my podcast on assessing the assessments. And the Myers-Briggs, I find it so interesting because my husband is introverted, but he's extroverted in small scenarios. So he comes alive with like 5 or 6 people. But you get him in front of 50, he's like, no, I'm good. I'm just going to sit here and read my book or whatever.
Right. Yes, I do. I'm an assessment girl too. I love all of those. And man, I love those videos on YouTube where the guy like acts out scenarios with your Myers-Briggs, the different personalities. And every time I'm just like, I'm an ENFJ.
I'm an ENFP. Thus the desk.
I just think it's so funny because it's so interesting, like how true those assessments are to your personality. It is just unreal to me. But I'm definitely all about, I love an assessment.
Yeah, so, you should check out the Kolbe.
What's it called?
The Kolbe, Kolbe. And it's sort of like how you work well with other people. So sometimes we like totally get along with our coworkers. We really like them. But we do not work well together. It's sort of like when you get a group project with someone and you don't get anything done, but man, you have a good time. The Kolbe kind of like shows you who you should work with to achieve a goal.
So let's talk about some of the steps that can be taken to help deal with bullying, manipulative bullying at work.
Yeah, there are different levels of it. And so there's certain types of people. I think it's like real obvious right now in the world. There are certain types of people who will never hear your message. They will never agree with you. You can bring all the facts, all of the, demands, all the boundary line drawing you want. They're not going to, those are toxic situations and those are different. That you need to get HR involved with. You have to record and make sure that you have a log of exactly what's going on. You have to know what the rules are and you have to protect yourself. You have to make sure that you draw your boundaries clearly, that you are clear in your correspondence and often in writing. And you might want to get someone to check the facts with you. Because what happens when you get a jerk is they may ask you something and you take it as that jerk, and you're like, okay, am I just ready to be triggered by everything that he does and says or she does and says?
Right.
And then the second layer down, and I find this in particular with women who have women bullies. So one of my clients had a boss that she was having a heck of a time dealing with. And this boss was seemed to be focusing on her and only on her. And she would bring her in to take care of these tasks and, to complain about what the rest of the crew was doing and all of this. And this, my client was like, I don't know why she doesn't like me so much. Why does she focus on me? Why does she complain down to me? And why is she so angry all the time? Well, in working with her, what we discovered is this boss was a poor communicator. She was, she was someone who came up in the time where, okay, there's one woman, she's it. Okay, bring her on. That kind of used to go on, hopefully is over. But, and she actually really liked this woman. And so she thought of her, as a confidant, but her whole persona was one where she had to be strong and firm and what she determined was manlike or whatever. And as we worked on communication skills with this woman, they actually became really good friends. She realized, she's grooming me for this position. She likes me. And she takes my input. So when I say, that attitude or that may not work with this group here of millennials, you might want to do it in a different way.
Yeah.
So sometimes the women bullies are actually trying to reach out and connect. They have just been alone in the wilderness for so long that they really don't know how. They've built up armor, to And then there's the other kind of female bully who is like, no, I'm the one female. There can only be one. And if you come in, it's that scarcity mindset.
Right.
And so in dealing with that, I find there's a lot of different skills that you can use. I mean, one of them is to repeat and expand. So repeat what you hear her saying, especially if it's in a scarcity mode, and expand on that. Well, if that's true, that means X, Y, Z. And usually it could say, well, if that's true, then that means that there's only going to be one woman on the project, one BIPOC person on the project, one part-time person on the project. Wow, that doesn't seem really fair. Where do we go from there? Because that takes them to the next step, because they're stuck in that scarcity mindset, right? They're stuck back here going, well, there's only going to be me, so I got to make sure I got to defend mine. And they might not even be aware that they're doing this,
Right.
female bullies. I feel like I got off the wilderness there. Am I going on the right track?
Yes.
Are these the right bullies you want to talk about?
Lord knows there's enough of it in the world, right?
It's true. It's true. Well, then you got that bully type person who just is so defensive. I mean, they come from a dysfunctional background. They have spent their life just defending or reacting because that's served them well. And I find that the best thing that you can do with this kind of person is get selective amnesia. Pretend like they're speaking in a very reasonable tone. Respond to what the intention is. Respond to only what you want to get across. There's this wonderful woman named Nikki Rausch she's called the Sales Maven. And she talks about selling without being creepy or gross. Anyway, she has a whole Sales Maven program. And she had this woman who would come to a lot of her events. And she would say something like, well, how much do you charge anyway? And Nikki would, tell her a price. And she goes, and you get paid that?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But finally she's like, why does this woman continue to come to all of my stuff if she hates me so much? And she would say to her, would you like to book a call to talk more about it? No, I don't really. Finally, this woman did book a call. She was kind of hostile, but Nikki said, would you like to hear the 3 ways that I think that we could work well together? And she goes, yeah. What happens, this woman is just kind of socially retarded. I mean, she doesn't know how to communicate in a way that's effectively. This woman ended up being one of Nikki's best clients.
Oh, wow.
She just, so whether or not you realize it, she calls them buying signals. But whether or not you realize it, this is just a dysfunctional communicator. And it's easy to go, check the attitude on this one. I don't want to deal with them.
Right.
But if the goal is communication, if the goal is less stress at work from this person, once you realize where they're coming from, it's sort of like, the monster in the closet. Once you realize that it's, some toy that's going off, it loses all of its power.
Right.
It no longer impacts you.
Yeah.
But when you're stressed out and reacting, your body keeps the score of every single emotion. I mean, think about something that's on your mind right now that you're kind of mulling over. How's your stomach? How do your shoulders feel?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Your body knows.
You're like the stress. Yeah. The stress is like you're carrying it. But I like that. I mean, it's like, do not give your power away. Like, no. Like, no, it's not worth it, and I probably said that to a couple of people this week at work. I was like, look, do not give your power and your energy to those things. Like, you have to be the person that says, you're only responsible for how you respond to something. And you cannot, like you said, you cannot be triggered by every little thing. Now, you have to know what triggers you.
Yes.
And you have to be able to, and I always say, and my therapist always says this when we talk about it, I mean, you have to honor the feeling. Like, it's okay to stop, but don't let it take up, have free rent. Like, don't let it take up resident in your, and it's okay to say, you know what, that person hurt my feelings. I don't like the way they spoke to me. And you can be sad or you can be mad about it, but it is up to you solely in how you respond back to that person. And I'm always never going to reply, if you're ugly to me, I'm not going to give you ugly back. I'm going to give you compassion. I'm going to try to give you empathy. Because I don't know what you're going through. I don't appreciate it, but I'm not going to be a jerk. Both of us being jerks is not going to solve the problem. So, and then also knowing when you have to stand up for yourself, because there are times when you have to draw a line. And you have to say, hey, let's have a conversation, because let's talk about how we can work together better, because that last conversation left something to be desired.
Yeah.
Those conversations
Yeah.
are always, it's like you said, those conversations are always golden, because when you call somebody out on their, BS or whatever, I mean, you could either get somebody, like you said, who goes straight into defense mode, somebody who is like oblivious to the fact that, or, they've got selective amnesia. Oh, I said
Mm-hmm.
that? You picked that up
Mm-hmm.
from the situation. Or you have somebody who's just like, you know what? You're right. Let's just talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, and you have to know what triggers them and what triggers you. And there are four main types of triggers that we all have. And when you know what triggers you and what that trigger is, like how you react, is it internal? Do you go inside and start making up stories or feeling shame? Or, how does that trigger show up in you physically? Because it always shows up in you physically.
right.
And how do you know when you've triggered someone else? I mean, I've worked with people who I'm a pretty much a say it as it is kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a verbal processor. I trigger certain people. They don't like that. And as I've gotten older, I'm aware of that. It's like, okay, this person, they don't want to hear me verbally process about whatever I want to have for lunch. This is not something they want to be involved in, But you have to know what that is. And
Right.
if you know what that is, and this relationship is important, then one of the things that you can do is pre-frame it. You can say, I need to talk to you about something, and it's kind of uncomfortable. Do you have some time later on today? Because that sets them up. If you come in and you say, hey, that BS email that you sent me, and they're like, what? I was thinking about what I wanted for lunch,
Exactly.
You can just pre-frame it a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
You can get them ready, and they can
Yes.
go through their own mind spiral of whatever they need to go through.
Wait, like, what did I do to her?
Right.
They're like trying to think back, but no, I definitely agree with that. I mean, because at least you've given them enough context to be able to get their mind started to like remember or rethink about about the last time you interacted. But there's nothing worse when someone sends you an email, a meeting, and it's just like a touch base. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
touch base could mean getting fired, getting in trouble, getting promoted, or touch base could be a lot of things. So, words of advice to out there: don't send a touch base email. Like, give more context.
Yeah, I have to put some stuff in my draft box sometimes. It's just like, oh, that's a face to face. That's a face to face.
Right. Or sometimes, when you have to type, when you've already typed the email 5 times where you were telling somebody off and you were like, it just felt good to type it out. Even though it lives in your drafts.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh
Get
my
that written
goodness.
down.
So obviously, I mean, like you said earlier, if there are issues, say in the workplace, it could extend over into your personal space, or what if there is that manipulative bullying at home in your personal life?
Mm-hmm.
Can you maybe touch on some examples of what that looks like?
Yeah, and frankly, usually there is. What I mean by that is if you accept a toxic work environment, it's because more than likely you were raised in dysfunction or trauma. I could say this because I was raised in dysfunction and trauma. And so I normalized abnormal behavior in many relationships in my life. And as you grow and you get older and you learn, you work through that personal development, you start to realize, wow, that's really abnormal behavior. Would I allow my children to experience that behavior? Or, when you start to see it for what it is, it's like a bell that gets rung and it can't be unrung. So when you normalized a toxic work environment, you're probably going to normalize a toxic friendship or a toxic intimate relationship. And so that manipulation can come in many different formats. It's so funny because every time I say manipulation, I did a series of podcasts. It's on my website, all on manipulation. And it's a 4 or 5 part series. I had to do a blooper reel because I would say manipulation.
Right. It's definitely, it's a tricky word.
Yeah. Started saying rude, jerks, assholes, it's like these different people.
Those people.
Right. You know who they are.
Yeah.
But there are 4 main types. I like 4s. Can you tell?
Yes, you do. I like it.
There are four main types of manipulative behavior. The first one is passive aggressive, right?
Mhm.
And so that is also what they call covert aggression. And it is sort of that, I think of it as like people who bow up on you to see if you'll like back down.
Right, right.
They'll try these things out. Now, there are dozens of little plays underneath each one of those. The next one down is just completely dismissing what you say, or a type of gaslighting. Like, I never said that. That didn't happen. You're crazy. God, settle down. You're overreacting. It's just a joke. Geez, it's like that one I used to get all the time. It's just a joke. And it's like, really? Because jokes are funny, and that's not funny at all. And I've told you I don't find that funny, so I have to think you're doing it on purpose.
Right.
Lob. You just got to kind of,
Yeah.
draw your own boundaries. But as women, we will mull a BS argument. Well, you're just being too sensitive. Okay, that's mine now. I'm going to go parse it. Am I being too sensitive? Am I, I heard a couple of guys fighting. I think this was when I was arguing, when I was a young 20-something. And the guy did something that was very passive aggressive, and I sort of took it. I was like, yeah, that's, your play, sir. And the other guy said, knock it off. That's BS. And it was just like, oh, that's brilliant. He called it what it was. I'm not going to play with this at all, And we see these in many different ways, like in red herrings and in false narratives, in rewriting history in different ways, but it just doesn't fit right with us.
Yeah.
And then there's also people who will just be like, it's the triangle. It's the drama triangle. You're so right. You are so right. Thank you so much. You're such a good friend. You're such a good lover. You're such a good XYZ, Can you help me with this? You seem so knowledgeable about it. And I really want to be a better person. And, and then what'll happen is that kicks you down the road for a while. And then they'll come up again with another manipulation tactic to keep the cycle going. And how you know that you're stuck in a manipulative relationship, whether it be at work, a toxic environment at work, or a toxic environment at home, is if the same pattern comes up over and over and over again, and there's no remedy. If you feel like I've been here before, we've had this conversation before, I feel like, shit, why do I feel like this?
Right.
I feel like I've done something wrong, and I don't know what I've done wrong. Well, 9 times out of 10, you're in a dysfunctional system, and you need to find out where exactly the triggers are, what the tactics are that are being used on you, what your part in it is, because we all have a part to play, whether it's codependency, whether it's our pleaser fixer mode, whether it's our perfectionist mode, we all have a part.
No, I like that. Those are that's some good advice. And I think too, it's just, I don't think people, probably no one has ever probably thought about the types of, if this is happening to them, like they probably have never even like been able to frame it. And I think this is a good way. So hopefully you all listening out there are able to take from and take the advice and use it to help yourself. But I think, especially the one you said that's really that stuck out to me was the person who is asking for help.
Yeah.
They're asking for help, but they're not really taking the advice or the help. They are fine with just having you on this like the hamster in the wheel. And no, I'm gonna do it this time. I mean, I'm really looking forward to getting that help, or I'm gonna jump through this, or I'm gonna go do that. And I think that one is actually probably one of the ones that it happens a lot to people, and they don't realize it.
Yeah.
So,
that's that triangle. I mean, we get into triangulation it's our nature. We're herd animals. We like to be in groups, and we want to be the in on the group. We want to be important in that group. And so it's sort of, it's a recipe for manipulation, but it's also a recipe for success when you are clear and have good self-esteem, which not all of us do, and have clear boundaries, which not all of us do, and know what we want and what we'll accept.
Yes.
That step on the journey. And to anyone out there who's listening to this and they're feeling a little defeated because they feel like they're in the same situation and they've been in this situation, welcome to the club. You're in good company. I was in it for 26 years. I mean, and I'm not dumb. I was just so ingrained in this is what life is like. These are what relationships are because of my family of origin, that when I found a dysfunctional group, it was that warm sweater that I used to wear growing up. And so it's like, oh, I know this game. I could play this game. It's like,
Right.
no, it's not. It's not good for you. So give yourself a break. When we know better, we do better. And
Yes.
we're all
Yes.
getting better.
Yes. Yep. And I agree with you. I mean, it's a process. We all have to. Everyone has to take that first step and
Hmm.
say that I want to work on myself. And everything does start inside. And when you're on that personal development journey, you just get to a place where, like you said, there are things that are just not going to be acceptable for you anymore. And trust me, everybody, like you said, I'm on that journey a year and a half ago. There were things that I would never say no to doing, and I would always, overextend myself to the point of overwhelm. But it again wasn't overwhelm, as you've probably heard me say out there a lot. It was just no boundaries. And
Hmm.
now having those boundaries are just like the best thing in life, because I'm like, no, 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 I don't think so.
I'm the fairy no mother. Nope.
Yeah, so it's definitely a journey that you just have to. It's just taking the first step, and it's the first step in really seeing your own value and your worth. And once you do that, there's a whole community of people out there
Hmm.
who can help you, and including you, Lara. So let's talk
Right.
about how you work with women, and talk about some of your programs in case anyone out there is wanting to learn more and get in contact with you.
You bet. Awesome. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So I work one-on-one with women, and I help them discover their triggered reactions, what their conflict personality type is. I help them deal with the manipulative and toxic people in their life, and I do this through a coaching program. I also work on teams. So if you have a team that may have clientele that comes to you in a heightened emotional state, especially like if you deal with a lot of jerks, basically I come in and I teach your staff how to set up systems that de-jerks the jerk. It toxic proofs your workplace so that you
Hmm.
can set yourself up for success.
Yeah.
And in March, I'm going to launch a new online group program. It's going to have training and group support and Voxer support. Once a week, we'll get together and talk about whatever's on our mind, because right now there's a lot of stuff going on,
Right.
and it's hard to deal with everything that's coming at us.
Mhm.
I feel like we need a group of women who can get together. So if you're interested in that, you can go to my website, difficulthappens.com. Information will be on there shortly, but you can also find out about pretty much everything that I do right there on difficulthappens.com.
Mhm.
If you want some free tips, my YouTube is chock full of free tips on dealing with that jerk in your life. So go ahead and go on over
Yes.
there and check it out.
And tell us about your book.
So my book is called Difficult Happens: How Triggers, Boundaries, and Emotions Impact You Every Day. And it walks through those 4 conflict personality types, especially in our personal life,
Mm-hmm.
and the different heritage emotions that we have, and how to walk through that if you're going to do the journey by yourself, so that you can kind of do that personal development on your own. Sometimes that's the first step, is we need to know what we don't know. We need to know where to go. And so
Mm-hmm.
this book kind of walks you through that. In conjunction with my podcast, Difficult Happens, there are over 150 episodes all on the topic of difficult. Now what?
Love it. Love it. Love it. I love that. Well, this has been great. Obviously, the last time you and I talked, I mean, I had so much fun with you, and I was so excited and couldn't wait to have here. So you know that there is always a place for you to come join me when you launch your new group next year. I hope you'll come back and check in and tell us about it. What else is next for you? Is there anything else we should know about before you leave me?
Well, something that I'm kind of excited about, and I keep trying to hold myself accountable to this, is I'm writing a book called Echoes of a Free Range Childhood.
Hmm.
Kind of talking about how really being raised in dysfunction and trauma, what that looks like, how that kind of manifests for the rest of us, as we get older.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell it in kind of a memoir setting, and so I'm looking forward to that. I keep talking about it because I'm like, yeah, have you written yet today, girl? No, you haven't. Better get on that.
That's right. And also, you know what? As I was sitting here, I was like, oh, I also got a 3 o'clock sunlight coming in, the Georgia sun just coming in and just like all on the side of my face.
You know what I thought that was at first? I thought you had a feather in your hair. But that feather kept going this way.
Oh my God.
Not a
No,
feather.
it is literally this. I have the blinds already closed, but the sun is just like, nope, coming in, lady, coming in. So, hey, I'll take it. Well, thank you again so much for joining me, Lara. This is such a great conversation. And I
Absolutely.
wish you all the success in the world and definitely hope you'll come back and see me again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome. Well, stay tuned, everybody. I'll be right back.